Good morning. Welcome to First Mover, your first global look at today's action in the Bitcoin, blockchain, and digital asset space. I'm your host, Christine Lee, and joining me are my co-host, Coindesk Managing Editor of Global Capital Markets, Lawrence Lewitton, as well as Managing Director of International Content, Emily Parker. Good morning, Emily. Good morning, Lawrence. Have a good weekend.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Doing
Fantastic
very well.
Weekend.
Excellent. Let's have a live look at Bitcoin. The Coindesk Bitcoin price XBX index is currently trading at $62,702. Bitcoin is up about 3.6% over the past 24 hours. And the Coindesk Ether price ETX index is at 4116. ETH is also making an advance of just over 2%. And the new DFX Coindesk's Defy index is trading at $631. Defy is up about 1.3%. The most reliable reference prices for institutions since 2014 are now published under the Coindesk brand, trusted globally as the leader in crypto news, events, and data. But looking at our top story of the day, Nigeria is going live with Africa's first central bank digital currency, the eNaira, being reported on Coindesk.com right now. Emily, did we know about this rollout? I mean, I feel like this has gone pretty stealth because, we haven't heard much about this eNaira.
Well, we knew that something was coming in October, and there were some reports just basically over the past few days that it would be coming out today. But yeah, I mean, this is a pretty big deal. So, there are many countries that are developing central bank digital currencies. I think like almost 80 countries are developing them, but actually launching one is another matter entirely. And I think this is one of, we talk so much about China, and China has been very advanced in developing a digital currency. But one of the effects of it is that other countries around the world are sort of like, following suit. So I'm excited to talk about this with our next guest.
Could this have any kind of market impact, Lawrence?
The short answer is no, because this is, again, a central bank digital currency. It's not a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, a free-floating big cryptocurrency like Bitcoin. It's not ETH. It's not any of the cryptos that we know. It's based off of a central bank currency, a fiat currency that's now been digitized or is partially digitized. So whether or not people maybe might use it to trade their crypto would remain to be seen. The odds are pretty low that that's necessarily what it's going to be used for. I mean, I guess it theoretically can be done so unless the central bank imposes controls, in which case you won't see the eNaira trading on, I don't know, Coinbase or whatever. Who knows? Maybe down the road that could change. But it all depends on what the central bank wants to do. It's a centralized cryptocurrency, if you will. It's a centralized digital currency. It's not a cryptocurrency like decentralized like Bitcoin. So it's a different concept completely.
Well, Nigeria is one of the top in the country. Activity for Bitcoin is one of the top out there in the world. So the government obviously has taken controls, or rather, has banned Bitcoin in certain ways, the on and off ramps for banking transactions. And so with this introduction of the eNaira, it should be interesting to see what happens with the crypto adoption, public crypto adoption. So Nigeria's eNaira was developed by fintech company Bit, whose digital currency management system is also behind the East Caribbean CBDC. Joining us now to discuss Nigeria's CBDC rollout is Olumide Adesina, a Nigeria-based investment trader and contributor to Coindesk, with an article out now called Nigeria's CBDC, the Good, Bad, and Ugly. So great to have you on the show, Olumide. So the eNaira Speed Wallet and eNaira Merchant Wallet are now available for download on Google and Apple on the app stores there to use the Nigerian eNaira. Have you downloaded it? What is the status of the rollout, and how do people in Nigeria feel about using the eNaira?
Yeah, I think the positivity around the CBDC is very high. Don't forget that it was supposed to be launched on October 1st, coinciding with the Independence Day of Nigeria's 61st Independence Day. But because of the demand on the platform, about 1 million ETH within an hour. So I felt the Apex Bank felt the need for it to go back to their drawing boards, because their initial plan was for a pilot program to allow this asset across many regions. But you see, the interesting thing we need to understand is that the CBDC is a very good idea. Based on data, you need to understand that growing amount of Nigerians are unbanked, and in a country of 200 million people, where you see not so much exposure in the banking industry, then you start feel disturbed. And you need to understand that Bitcoin, in terms of Bitcoin interest, Nigeria happens to be the only country in the world with the highest, according to Google Trend, it has a perfect score of 100%. So I think the Apex Bank, with some of their analysts, felt the need for this to come in. So basically, the eNaira is for transaction, and because of the ban, there's no direct relation with the traditional crypto market. So we are seeing that the eNaira exclusively will be used for transactions in areas where you see low banking infrastructure. And one good thing about it is that it doesn't really need the internet, so it has offline capability. So the president, in a moment, would unveil the inner in the Nigerian capital city.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to have you here on this very important day. So I guess the question is, you just mentioned two things. One is that Nigeria really is one of the Bitcoin capitals of the world. And two, they're rolling out this central bank digital currency. And you also mentioned that the government has banned various aspects of cryptocurrency. So is this central bank digital currency an attempt to kind of like replace Bitcoin, or to get people less interested in Bitcoin? And do you think that will be successful?
Yeah, I think from a financial regulatory perspective, I think that's the initial plan, because you need to understand in 2020, remittance dropped by 27%, and that was partly due to the fact that we saw a growing amount of young Nigerians using crypto assets for transactions. And also, you need to understand that the exposure of crypto assets across young Nigerians is so high that you see the likes of Binance, FTX, and other leading crypto exchanges setting up offices in Nigeria. So the fact that we are seeing that it felt the wisdom, the Apex Bank felt the wisdom that the traditional banking industry were losing remittance volume, and they need to see other ways at which they could block money laundering channels. So they felt that they needed something that they could supervise. So the eNaira was a no-brainer, though the eNaira was something that was in the works for about 4 years ago. But I felt the crypto ban movement. So I think that in the long run, I think the financial inclusion will gain traction, because see, the eNaira acceptability looks interesting, because despite we see growing amount of crypto enthusiasts being critical about the project, we're seeing growing amount of Nigerians interested in the platform. And also, you need to see that Nigerian tier one banks are already recruiting people in the crypto space, where there are already vacancies around blockchain developers, and that is very interesting. So it tells you that the CBDC that seems to be a rival to the blockchain, to Bitcoin, the traditional crypto market, is somehow going to support, because now we're going to see people in the traditional crypto space seeking to be part of the CBDC. But I think in the long run, questions will be asked, because first of all, we don't know. We don't need to use the local. We have a form of social security number, which we call the BVN, biometric verification number. So we need to understand how that will take, whether it's necessary to use the eNaira. Though the central bank has said that you don't need to have a bank account, to run the eNaira. So it's really going to see how the adoption will be. But I feel that there's a lot of positivity around the market. And to tell you how the positivity is so strong, a lot of Nigerian dailies are already awaiting the launch of the eNaira. And that tells you that this is something that is been very spontaneous. This is one of the brightest products the CBN has created in a very long while. So I feel that it's a win for the crypto community, though a lot of Nigerians are still upset the fact that they can't really buy their crypto assets at the price you see on Coinbase, and that's because there is a crypto transaction ban by the Apex Bank. So it makes it almost impossible for financial institutions to deal directly with the crypto market. So Nigerians have to buy these things through P2P, peer-to-peer, and most of the time the prices are inflated. So that's the problem Nigerians are having with the regulator. So the CBDC might seem to be very interesting, but some Nigerians are not buying the fact that they ban the traditional crypto assets.
One question about the CBDC, and you mentioned this in your op-ed, or one of the dangers of a central bank digital currency is privacy, right? That the government can kind of see your transactions. And how big a concern is that in Nigeria? And also, has Nigeria's CBDC had any influence from China? Do you think that the Nigerian government has dealt with the Chinese government at all in terms of getting advice on the technology?
I think from the financial industry, I think despite the fact that a growing amount of businesses get loans from China, I think they're closer to the Americans and the British than ever before. So most of the time, you see that most of the established American brands set a stronghold in the Nigerian ecosystem. It's just surprising we don't have Coinbase exposure in our market. But having said that, I think there is no direct relationship with the Chinese that because the service provider BIT is a Caribbean company, and I've not seen any Chinese player in the ecosystem yet. And you also need to understand that we don't really have any Chinese domiciled bank in Nigeria. So that also tells you that that bias seems to be exaggerated. But having said that, I think a lot of people are concerned about the fact that government can use such to attack their privacy. Because you need to understand that, for example, a number of protesters' accounts were closed during the NSAS, during the fight against police brutality, and a lot of people felt the need that that government is becoming powerful with this kind of instrument. But you need to understand that one of the problems facing Africa's biggest economy is the fact that we kind of have loose cash flow system. So what I mean by that is that a lot of people use the system to launder money, and that's why the Apex Bank felt the need to tighten things across the spectrum. You know, running an account in China from abroad, you have a maximum of $50,000 per citizen, but in Nigeria, we don't have such limit. So the Apex Bank is trying to use its resources to try and restore financial stability, knowing full well that COVID-19 has disrupted the energy market, where Nigeria solely benefits from, because about 75% of Nigerian earnings come from crude oil, and such exposure has made Nigeria suffer here big time when broke Nigeria's key markets like India, China, and the Americans. So the CBDC on the privacy level, I think, would somewhat make some concerns, but the Apex Bank has promised that no data will be stored on the blockchain. So let's wait and see.
Olumide, we got to end it there, but thank you so much for joining us this morning. Also, folks, watch out for his article on the eNaira, the good, the bad, and the ugly. All right, that was Olumide Adesina, a Nigeria-based investment trader and contributor to Coindesk. Coming up, checking in on Asia and a crypto markets update with crypto asset manager Arca and investment firm Dragonfly Capital. Now for the daily forecast, an update on what's happening in the Asia crypto markets. Here's Angie Lau of Forecast News.
Welcome to the Daily Forecast, October 25th, 2021. I'm Angie Lau, Editor-in-Chief of Forecast News, covering all things blockchain. Well, less than a week after its launch, the first Bitcoin futures ETF to trade in the U.S. is already looking to make some adjustments. ProShares has filed for an exemption from trading limits at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. We're going to take a look at what that exemption would mean for investors and a whole lot more coming up. Let's get you up to speed from Asia to the world. First up, while ProShares ETF launch was seen as a landmark in Bitcoin history, it was not without its critics. And now it's looking to secure an exemption from trading limits at the CME, where it purchases futures contracts. That exemption would allow the firm to maintain exposure to Bitcoin if the fund continues to grow. In other words, they just want to be able to buy more just to keep up with the demand for their Bitcoin futures ETF. But could this filing ruffle even more feathers? Forecast News' Lachlan Keller reports.
According to an article in Barron's, ProShares CEO Michael Sapir said the firm filed for an exemption from its CME positions limits and to be able to use swaps if need be. ProShares is already at 75% of its limit, holding 2,133 contracts for November and 1,679 for October. Sapir also told Barron's the firm will request permission to invest in other kinds of derivatives contracts. However, one expert told Forecast News that while the protection offered by futures being regulated may have proved attractive initially, the additional expense of rolling monthly futures contracts fees, in addition to fund and management fees, may eventually work against ProShares ETF.
6 months down the line, you may see the performance has been so atrocious relative to all the other asset classes that people go, why on earth am I bothering to do this? And they're only bothering to do it is because, they're not being allowed to invest directly or to run an ETF directly investing in the underlying asset.
Sullivan says that means it will be difficult for the fund to outperform and will lag behind Bitcoin's performance by at least a percentage of those fees. For Forecast News, I'm Lachlan Keller.
Meanwhile, Chinese mining rig maker Bitmain is seeing the benefit of the United States emerging as a cryptocurrency mining hotspot. Nasdaq-listed Greenidge says it plans to ramp up its operations across the U.S. by more than doubling its previous order with Bitmain. Forecast News' Timmy Shen has mined all the details.
Greenidge has upsized its order of Bitmain S19j Pro miners from 10,000 to 22,500, with the company saying it expects delivery in the second and third quarters of next year. To fuel its growth, Greenidge has signed agreements for at least 6 potential data centers in Texas, a popular destination for crypto miners. It's also agreed to purchase a facility in South Carolina to mine crypto. Between them, the potential sites offer over 3,000 megawatts of electrical capacity, 500 megawatts of which it anticipates having by 2023. The expansion comes as the U.S. has emerged as a new hub for mining activities. In the wake of the stepped-up ban in China, many players are looking to more regulation-friendly shores, with the U.S. benefiting from the exodus. For Forecast News, I'm Timmy Shan, Taipei, Taiwan.
And finally today, anything you can do, I can do better. Okay, sorry about singing there, but it's pretty much what Dogecoin copycat token Shiba Inu was saying over the weekend. Shiba Inu jumped almost 60% in less than 24 hours on Sunday to reach an all-time high as Doge also surged over the weekend. Now, according to data from CoinMarketCap, it's now the 13th largest token by market cap. Can you believe it? Just before the surge, the stock and crypto trading platform Robinhood, which, by the way, was at the center of the GameStop saga that led to the rise of meme coins, added Shiba Inu as an option to a client survey, kind of signaling maybe they could be listing it soon. Well, it wasn't the only dog-based token to be thrown a bone over the weekend either. Dogecoin jumped 8% after a tweet from Tesla CEO and longtime Doge fan referenced the token. While Doge's price retraced to almost the same position it was before the jump early Monday Asia time, it was then let off the leash and gained 12% before receding again, signaling a possible price action correlation with Shiba Inu. We're going to be keeping an eye on whether these two dogs keep up the pace or curl up on the rug for a nap. And that's the daily forecast from our vantage point right here in Asia. For more, visit forecast.news. I'm Editor-in-Chief Angie Lau. Until the next time.
The Crypto Markets Update is presented by Grayscale, the world's largest digital currency asset manager.
Checking in on Bitcoin, the Coindesk Bitcoin price XPX index is trading at $62,991, climbing toward that $63,000 threshold, up about 3.9% over the past 24 hours. The Coindesk Ether price ETX index at 4136. ETH is also climbing over 2%, and the new DFX Coindesk Defy index is at $629, up about almost 2% over the past 24 hours. Joining us now to talk about the crypto markets is David Nage, portfolio manager at crypto asset manager Arca. Hello there, David. Great to see you. So just over the past 24 hours, we've been seeing Bitcoin trading between the $59,000 to $63,000 range. Short term, what's your outlook on Bitcoin and the crypto markets at large?
We've been noticing a real change in narrative over the last 6 months, where as in the beginning of the summer, the focus was on China. And then it became a focus on what's happening within the overall asset class with raises like FTX's recent raise and then another recent FTX raise. So we've seen a change in narrative to focusing on one specific sovereign nation to a focus on what's happening in the asset class. And in that time, you've seen a lot of things happen specifically with Bitcoin. You've seen the ETFs over the last few weeks happen. You've seen, obviously, with comments from Gensler and others, and then obviously, the actual approvals of these ETFs, that it seems that some of the regulatory overhang is starting to become a little bit more clear. I think that's been the largest obstacle for institutional investors is the institutional overhang within regards to regulatory effect. And as we're starting to get a little bit more clear on that, I think you're starting to see, especially with the global macro environment that we're dealing with, and especially here in the United States, you have 10-year treasuries, obviously, over the last few days, going higher. You have Secretary Yellen obviously talking about the issues regards to inflation and saying that she thinks it may abate towards Q1, Q2 of 2022. And so that obviously has been sparking market interest as we deal with our own issues here domestically. So I think all of this has continued on this narrative that's happened over the last year and a half that Bitcoin serves a purpose in one's portfolio as a potential store of wealth and an asset that is uncorrelated, or as I always like to say, untethered, if you will, to what's happened here in the global macro environment.
So, David, you guys are putting your money where your mouth is recently with a $30 million fund that you just launched, although albeit it's relatively small amount for your portfolio, but nonetheless, what does it say about what are your investments in it, and what does that say about your overall outlook? How are you applying what you invest in with this fund to your overall outlook in crypto?
Over the last 3 years, we have learned a lot in this asset class with our flagship fund, our digital asset fund. We've spent early days in decentralized finance and DeFi. We've also spent early days in what's happened with play-to-earn gaming. We were one of Axie Infinity's first investors last year, and we've had a front row seat to what's happened with this notion of play-to-earn games. This, I think, is going to be a very important aspect of Endeavor going forward, as we've learned and we've been able to observe over the last year and a half or so of this new narrative that's come through. It's my opinion that the next 100 million users of digital assets are going to come through blockchain-based gaming. And we've seen that as evidenced with Axie Infinity's daily active user growth over the last 5.5 months. In April of this year, they were at 38,000 daily active users, and now they're over 2 million daily active users. And that has been further accelerated by Yield Guild Games with YGG, providing scholarships to those that may not have the economic means to purchase the 3 NFTs to play the game. And so this is becoming a very big part of the focus of Endeavor is NFTs and gaming, as we've already seen this kind of early maturation of what's happened here. And we're starting to see more games that have similar dynamics to this, play to earn, having the ability with YGG providing scholarships for those same players. And we're starting to see pockets of interest in certain parts of the world. One of them is Brazil, where you have 200 million people living there and 95 million of them are gamers. That's 47% penetration. So again, like what we saw with the Philippines, where Axie and YGG played a significant role, we think that this is going to be another pocket where we're going to see geographic locations that have been dealing with hardships, especially with unemployment and COVID, where gaming, especially the ability to earn a in-game asset and then have the on-ramps and off-ramps to be able to actually pay for food and pay for rent and pay for clothing. These are things that are actual use cases. These are not just speculative assets where you're thinking that the price is going to go higher. And so this is what we kind of call a grind economy, where you actually can play a game and earn a living, for instance. So with Endeavor, this is going to be a very significant part of that in terms of NFTs and gaming. The second layers and the third layers are going to be DeFi. Some people call DeFi 2.0 this new idea of abracadabra money. I actually have been calling DeFi 2.0 structured products and credit. I believe that DeFi, when it first came out, when the experiments that started to unravel, you have this ability to actually, we talked about with Nigeria, you talked about some of the effects with the eNaira. You have this ability with DeFi to actually help 1 billion people throughout the world who don't have a credit score, who don't have an identity. And with the combination of DeFi being able to look at their usage of crypto assets, whether lending or staking, and be able to port some real world data, you can actually, there are some startups that are actually now able to create credit scores for people who don't have them. and then you layer on this idea of decentralized identity or DIDs, you now have the ability to then further help, this 1 billion population or more into capital markets, into more of the upper echelons of the ability to get loans and be able to get mortgages. So that's going to be the second. And the third is going to be Web3, where we still see continuance. We've seen some effects of Web2 falling apart over the last few weeks. And we see that Web3 still have a major predominance here with interoperability, with the ability to have a multi-chain world where all of these different layer ones can operate together and create uniform platforms that people actually love and enjoy.
Wow, David, I hear you out and I get really excited for what's coming forward. We got to wrap it there, but thank you so much for your insights. That was Arca portfolio manager David Nage. And speaking of, he mentions play to earn games, DeFi, as well as Web3 interoperability. So joining us now to deep further into the DeFi markets as well as Asia is Haseeb Qureshi, managing partner at crypto investment firm Dragonfly Capital. Hello there, Haseeb. So you just heard from David. There's a lot of excitement, at least in the ETF world in the US, but is that having an impact on DeFi as well as Asia and all the investment there?
Well, right now, thankfully, the US has put the rest of the world economy on its back with respect to crypto. So the ETF and all the excitement that we're seeing around DeFi, right now, Asia's lagging a little bit because of the situation that's going on in mainland China. The recent China ban has scattered a lot of the energy that we were seeing earlier in the year in Asia, but a lot of it is reconstituting itself now. So what we've seen from the beginning of the year is that since China has turned more aggressive against crypto, a lot of the Chinese founders and Chinese companies have migrated out of mainland China into Singapore. Singapore now feels like the center of gravity of crypto in Asia, where it's very similar to what Switzerland felt like back in 2017, where a lot of the talent comes from China, a lot of the engineers, the people with ideas, the innovations. But if they want to build something real, they end up going to Singapore. And that's where they set up shop. That's where they incorporate. That's where they move their engineering teams. And so that's where we're seeing a lot of action now, which is a big change from what we were seeing just a year ago.
Oh, I think, Emily, you're on mute.
Sorry. Can you tell us a little bit about what's happening with actually the Chinese market? China, as we know, is like a huge center for crypto trade, and
That's right.
the Chinese government has definitely closed a lot of the loopholes. But do you have a sense of what's happening with crypto trading there, and on the retail side, and how big an impact we're going to see from these new restrictions?
Yeah, so the restrictions are significant. So basically what happened in mainland China is that the two major onshore exchanges, OKX and Huobi, when the China ban took place, almost immediately they announced that they were going to start putting restrictions on new users coming in from mainland China. Basically, this meant no new signups. So if you're a new user from mainland China, you cannot get onto these platforms. Both the platforms are going to sunset users from mainland China at some point this year. I believe both of them have not done so yet, but there's already a planned date during which essentially everything's going to turn off. So if you don't have your money out by then you're not going to be able to trade anymore on the platform. So the status quo is that when the China ban took place, speaking of DeFi, at the same time there were a bunch of websites that were applicable to DeFi, like Uniswap.org and CoinGecko and things like that people were using as part of the DeFi suite that almost immediately got put under the Great Firewall, such that Chinese users could no longer access them without using a VPN. Now, that being said, lots of users in China know how to use VPNs. So if you were participating in crypto and you wanted to get access to Twitter or Medium, then you needed to have a VPN in the first place in order to get information, especially in 2021, when so much of what's happening in crypto is NFTs, is these new, airdrops and auctions. And if you want to be playing that game, you needed to have access to this information. So a lot of the users and a lot of the communities in China are still actually thriving, even in spite of this. But they now have to kind of play on the VPN game, which is very similar to how it was actually before, in the 2017, 2018 period. So a lot of users in China have been through this, and they understand, okay, this is just what I got to do now if I want to continue playing in DeFi.
So Haseeb, where are you putting your money? What are you investing in?
So we're still investing in the early stage. I mean, a lot of the founders now that we're backing, it used to be that we were backing a lot of founders in mainland China. At this point, again, the founders they might come from mainland China, but they end up moving into Singapore and try to serve the Pan-Asia market as opposed to only serving mainland China. It doesn't really feel tenable anymore to have companies that are primarily serving mainland China. But one thing that's for sure is that DeFi is incredibly popular in China. I mean, this is the reason why China cracked down on DeFi so aggressively, is because they realized, look, as a country that relies a tremendous amount on capital controls, you were speaking of Nigeria earlier in the segment. As a country that relies on capital controls, DeFi is kind of the opposite of capital controls. DeFi is the idea that anybody can do whatever they want. And so a lot of the demand, and actually one of the things that was cited in the original ban on cryptocurrencies, they weren't talking about Ether and Dogecoin and all these other things. They said Bitcoin and Tether. Those are the two things they really didn't want to see, draining basically draining the demand for the RMB. So that I think is the big story within China. And so for us, we're really looking for on the DeFi side, protocols that can serve the entire world, because the users who are in China and or who leave China who have access to offshore banking, those users are still very live and active in the DeFi ecosystem. And I think they'll be served by all the innovations that end up coming to DeFi.
Awesome. Haseeb, thanks for joining us. That was Dragonfly Capital Managing Partner Haseeb Qureshi. Coming up, the first DeFi candidate to run for Congress, and we'll have that all next.
Coindesk Indexes, the market standard for crypto assets since 2014. The Coindesk DeFi Index is our latest product and provides insight and exposure into decentralized finance. Our indexes are key for investors looking to access and understand crypto markets.
The Coindesk DeFi Index is the best tool for a diversified approach to this compelling new category of digital assets.
The Coindesk DeFi Index, measuring the investable DeFi market.
The Coindesk Spotlight is brought to you by Nexo, the place to earn on Bitcoin, Ethereum, and more.
Decentralized finance is coming to the ballot in the state of Oregon. Yearn developer Matt West is running for Congress on a pro-crypto platform as a Democrat. Please give a warm welcome to Matt West, candidate for Oregon's 6th U.S. House District. Hello there, Matt. So you say that you're the first DeFi candidate to run for Congress. Why do we need a DeFi candidate for Congress? What do you bring to the people's table?
Thank you. That's a great question.
You're on mute, Matt.
Am I?
Oh. Okay, never mind.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Starting over. Hi, thank you. I think that's a really great question. Part of the issues that led to DeFi being popularized in the first place is the fact that people want to have access to their own money and control their own funds. As mentioned on one of the previous segments, people talk about banking the unbanked and serving those who have previously been unable to have access to these financial institutions. When it comes to DeFi, that's very similar in terms of what we deal with. When you look at the traditional markets and the traditional banks, a lot of people have been locked out of those opportunities. They're not able to use the same tools and strategies that the big bankers have been able to do for decades. And DeFi really does help to even that playing field, as it were. So I believe that's what DeFi helps to bring to the table, and which is why it aligns with my core values as a Democrat in terms of empowering people to live their best lives.
So Matt, let's just be real here for a second. With so much going on in this country, I mean, COVID is just one of many things. Is there anybody really voting based on DeFi? Is this really the primary issue for any voter anywhere? I mean, let's just honestly, it's hard for me to imagine, but maybe they're out there.
That is absolutely correct, I think. DeFi and just cryptocurrency is one aspect of my platform. I've been involved in cryptocurrency since Bitcoin was released in 2009. I mined originally on one of my old computers, lost that hard drive, unfortunately, like so many people have the exact same story. Got back into Bitcoin mining in 2013 with a Butterfly Labs Jalapeno ASIC, which really dates me in that case, for those who know what that is. My other parts of the platform are more akin to my other background. For example, I have a PhD in chemical engineering. I did my research in grad school on renewable energy, fuel cells, green climate change, stuff like that. And I've spent the last 7 years working at Intel, where I've been helping to develop the microprocessors and the development manufacturing process for those new products. So my platform is pretty broad. It's not just DeFi. I think that with all of the information that we're dealing with right now, with climate change and the West Coast being on fire constantly, in Portland we had a heat dome of 116 degrees. Inside my apartment got to 94 degrees, and that is with an air conditioner. It just wasn't strong enough to help handle that sort of heat load. And when we're dealing with the pandemic and vaccines, like you mentioned, my platform comes at it from an angle of science and fact, and trying to bring that sort of rationality of my scientific background to Congress, where I think we really are lacking a lot of that scientific knowledge. A lot of these people who are making decisions based on, making decisions for science don't necessarily have all the understanding and all the tools to help them understand those things, which is similar to how people in Congress have been approaching Bitcoin and DeFi and blockchain in general, as we've seen with the infrastructure plan. If you want to read my full platform, it's on my website, mattwestforcongress.com. You can take a look there, and it goes into lots of various things that I just talked about.
So, Matt, first off, I don't think you want to admit too much about missing that hard drive. I mean, that could just be used against you in a campaign, that you lost millions of dollars. What's next? But the other thing is, you're running as a Democrat, and your election is in 2022. So you're probably most likely going to miss the vote on these stimulus bills, the stimuli, the trillions of dollars that are going to be spent. We have a situation right now in the economy where we have more job openings than we have people looking for work. So would you vote for this kind of stimulus, first of all? Second of all, wouldn't that create basically a massive amount of inflation, which you as a crypto holder might benefit? Aren't you somewhat incentivized to debase the currency by all this massive spending?
Okay. I hear where you're coming from with those concerns. Inflation is a real issue that we're seeing over the last couple of years, particularly with the last year. Historically, inflation has not really been too much of an issue in this country for a long time, and now we're suddenly seeing it become real. That being said, there's something to be said for stimulus in general, not just in terms of stimulating the big banks and big industries, but also giving those checks to individual people who really did need the help when they were essentially locked at home and forced to not be able to go out and work. So I do believe that the stimulus plan is inherently necessary. A stimulus is not a bad thing in of itself, and it's not necessarily a boogeyman. It's how that money is allocated, how it's spent, whether it's spent wisely. Taking out money in loans to help, say, build a company and build a business can be seen as a net positive, whereas taking out loans to go buy yourself a fancy Lambo might be seen as a not useful use of funds. So I do hear you, and I do think that inflation is going to be a real problem as we get into the next year or two. I just don't think that there is necessarily a way around that doesn't hurt the individual people who are needing access to healthcare, needing access to getting a check to help keep their mortgage afloat. It's a problem, and it's something that we're going to have to deal with.
Just quickly, so recently the crypto community has become a lot more political, largely thanks to the infrastructure bill debate in Washington. Given that you are positioning yourself as a DeFi candidate, are you expecting to receive political donations from the crypto community?
That's a great question. I would like to hope the answer to that is yes. I have been interesting to see watching the crypto community become more politically active. A lot of people started talking about running for office, running for Congress. I don't think a lot of people realize how long that road is. I was already in the process of building my campaign once I started seeing people on Twitter start talking about the infrastructure bill and start talking about how we needed to get involved and politically active. And I kind of had to sit on my hands and not tweet anything about it in order to keep the secret due to a bunch of different reasons, including regulations. I would like to think that the crypto community would donate. The issues that we're facing right now is kind of mission critical as we're looking at it. With the infrastructure bill that came out and all the debating and all the issues, I would like to say that my Senator Ron Wyden did a great job with coming out with that compromise amendment. But as we saw, there were still plenty of people in Congress who didn't understand what crypto was, talking about banning proof of stake and other things in ways that clearly anyone who understands blockchain and cryptocurrency thought were nonsensical. In that terms, raising money via cryptocurrency has been a big aspect of my platform. I specifically launched the crypto community on the first day that we got the access to the BitPay link for donations on our website, because I wanted to make that pitch to the crypto community saying that I take you guys seriously. So yes, raising money via cryptocurrency is going to be a huge thing. Yes, please.
Well, we wish you luck on your run. We got to wrap it there. But folks, if you want to donate, you can find Matt West online. And again, good luck on your run. That was Yearn developer Matt West, Oregon candidate for Congress. Time now to check in with Crypto Twitter with our tweet of the day. This tweet from Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey has his platform in a tizzy, tweeting, "Hyperinflation is going to change everything. It's happening. Do you agree?" Let us know in the video comments. All right, that's it for First Mover. Thank you, Emily Parker and Lawrence Lewitton. I'm your host, Christine Lee. I'll be back live at 3 p.m. with All About Bitcoin. Coming up at noon is The Hash. You're watching Coindesk TV.